Stephen,
Here.
Mark,
Here.
Sal.
Here.
Mike,
Here.
Mike,
Here.
Karen. Here. All right, excellent. Ellie sent around the minute from November 2nd. Has everyone had a chance to take a look at them? Do we have any omissions, additions, changes? Yes, Karen?
There's one little typo in the section about generators. And there it says there, instead of saying there, it's TH, it's just not quite the whole word. I can't, it's somewhere in that part.
I'll find it.
You'll find it, yeah, that's the only.
All right, like that.
Minor thing. Put them up.
Yeah, of course, right? Anything else? All right, I'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes as corrected.
I'll move.
In a second.
Second.
All right, you got Mike making the motion, Mark making the second,
All right, Mike,
Mike Sampson.
okay.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Any abstentions? All right. Excellent. So I think what we'll do is we'll start with, is Amy here?
Amy is not here, but you have trustees.
Yeah, okay, excellent. So why don't we start with the library? And
I have some final things.
Thank you.
those of us who have the book, starts on page 10, goes over to page 11. Floor is yours.
So this Amy, will answer any questions. She had medical procedures yesterday. So, if there are any questions that we can't help with, we'll get you an answer. Pretty much nothing changed from last year on the budget. The only exception would be whatever the wage increase is, but other than that, everything straight across from last year. We were very fortunate this year to get a couple grants and things, partly from good grant writing and then partly for, the involvement that Amy and the other staff has at the school. They got a grant for the school, and that was quite nice. It included some free books, which we always love. And then our friendly group is just fabulous. They always do great stuff for us. If we need anything, books, those hot spots that seem to be a big thing this year. Anything, they're there for us. So we do have great community engagement through them and their funds appeal. And then other grants like the Brundage Foundation, which we use to offset the other towns that use the library. The stipulation with the Brundage grant, if you don't know, is that we can't deny our other local communities access. They provide funds to ensure they can come. So, any questions for us?
Do you guys have a plan in place for Enfield closing for a month, 5 weeks?
So the Enfield Library, can come and use our library anytime, and kind of just have that reciprocal, but they will be set up, shortly, but I don't expect we'll get much more than we have.
Because I mean, they're closed for 5 weeks. So.
Yeah, just when they're moving, but
Yeah.
yeah, Amy has, reached out with them. We do quite a bit with the Enfield Library. We partnered with them for some of our, programming this year that was a little more expensive than usual, but we got some bigger things through. We had some artists come and do some, discussing artwork and stuff like that, like history lessons, almost documentary level, so it was quite fabulous. And then we worked with Enfield and Plainfield, I believe, when we had the magician come, and last year it was in Enfield, so this year it was in Canaan, to have it out on the green, so we do a lot with the surrounding communities, absolutely. Did you have?
Oh, no, I just was remembering, I thought I saw an article somewhere the other day in the new Facebook or something that the infield, but I don't know if the library, if just the town offices are moving into Rockville.
Yes,
So I don't know if the library is or not, so.
yes, they're all.
I just remembered that. I didn't know if that was all.
Karen?
What's this line? Library building repair and maintenance for $130,000. We're proposing that go into the general town budget, yes, correct?
I think we should remove
What-
that.
Did we move that? I remember we discussed it,
It's a government buildings.
we moved it to government buildings.
That's what the, I was saying.
And it's coming out of the budget and running as a warrant article, so whatever the quote comes in at.
I can't hear, I apologize, I'm deaf in 1 ear, so I'm gonna be. The money that we have, in the trustee account for building and maintenance is money that the trustees have been finding a way towards renovating the upstairs.
And we were just saying that the exterior repair and maintenance has gone out to bids, so what the quote comes in at is running as a warrant article.
Right, I'm not sure what the town is gonna do for the outside of the building, but the building, cost and repair is actually the town's responsibility, not the trustees.
Yeah, I just want to vote with that. So it's coming, I'm sorry, I don't remember that discussion we had. That it's gonna go as a warrant article. For whatever
Yeah, whatever the.
it is for the repair, the windows, the rotted windows, and that sort of stuff, is that?
Yeah.
The whole list of either repairs.
Yeah, we met with, government, Mike Barnes, last week, he, I believe, is gonna put a bid in, he expressed an interest, I don't know if you know. But, he was actually the only one that showed up for our site visit, but hopefully we'll get a bid.
So Nate, if I understood you correctly, Nate, I think you said just a minute ago that it was gonna be charged to the general government buildings in that section of the budget and not directed to the library.
Right, that's what that was going to be, is in government buildings, should the warrant article pass, is that?
What our new philosophy is charging department expenses to the department, so we can start tracking the overall expenses
Well,
for that.
I object because the library is not the only entity that uses that building.
But can't we fund it from the general fund and?
Well, yeah, I'm perfectly fine with that. It's a town building, just like we have the senior center. That's a town building. Although we don't use it for anything. The only people that use it are the seniors and some of the social programs, but we have no town functions in that building anymore, but we pay for its upkeep and we pay for the water and sewer.
We're signing it out for our trustee meetings.
Oh, do you really?
Starting this month.
Oh, okay, that's right. Well, Monica's office is down there and so is Carrie Ann. They're both in that building.
So what I'm hearing is you want me to move their library repair and maintenance and create a line in 01 account number.
I'm not saying anything. I just thought that that's what they said was happening and I don't remember that, so. I just wanted to see if that was, if I understood him correctly. But no, I'm not okay with a lot of this stuff in the way it's, the way it's identified, because we have departments that are being held accountable for stuff that they have no control over. And we haven't been tracking a lot of these expenses anyway, and I just think it's too convoluted, to follow. And I won't be voting for any of it, so. You got, the rest of you can do whatever you want. Well,
Mike?
Just for refreshing my memory, I see that I put in into the government buildings repairs and maintenance. 100,000, is that the number that was plugged in or was it a different number?
When I printed off the budget in the very beginning, I thought that's where the repair and maintenance was supposed to be coded. So then you've since decided to pull it out, run it as a warrant article, and it would be paid from the buildings and grounds.
Okay, and the very first one, you under government buildings, you had 44,000. Has that changed?
Oh, you mean the 4194 account?
I'm sort of confused, just bear with me. All I'm looking for is. If it's a warrant article, then we shouldn't have it in both locations, in the general fund and in the warrant.
right,
It's not, but the 44,000 in general repairs is tagged for senior center projects, roof leaking and smoke detector issues.
Okay, so the 100 isn't there at all.
Correct.
So Nate, that means that it's not in government buildings.
So
at this
it's not
point.
removed. So do we want to?
So we put it originally in the library as a placeholder, so we know where we were gonna spend that, try to raise money to spend that. It became pretty evident we couldn't do it just through the regular budget process, so that's where we went to. Opted to go to a warrant article, so where it goes after it's in a warrant article,
Will the proposed warrant article be for 130?
whatever it comes in, we don't know what the estimate is yet, we're still waiting on that, so.
Yes, Karen?
But if the warrant article gets voted down. Then that work does not get done to the
Correct.
library,
That is correct,
That's-
so,
which is.
so the.
bad. It's going to be worse.
Well, no, because we're still putting money into the general, the building trust fund, hopefully.
Yeah.
What, the library trust?
No, not the library, there's a government building.
Oh, okay,
Yeah, here's the thing.
The board's thought process, Karen, was that. Like the fire department, the library is a entity in the town that very few people are gonna vote against. And we figured it would have a much better chance of getting voted on positively if it was a warrant article standalone, so. But if we put, anytime we put, not be able to reach our capital request for the fire department, that's the department we always pull out and put it as a warrant article. And it's always passed, so that was the thought process.
so, okay, so if the warrant article passed, it's 100,
We don't know yet.
100,
Right.
whatever. Into the general budget, into the budget, into the tax requirement,
Correct.
all right.
So where should,
Just to clarify, so we understand, when Steve is referencing in government buildings, there's a balance of. Right now, $195,154 in that account, and we're asking, the CIP is gonna be asking for a warrant article for. An additional 50 to go in 2024, so you'll have 245 theoretically in that account. So if, for instance, the warrant doesn't pass, you could theoretically use the money in there to fix the library, and then we'll have to adjust the rest of them as we move forward with the rest of the renovations that we.
So what's the thinking about not taking that money now? Why making that warrant article?
Because we have other requirements other than just repairing the outside of that building.
I don't know that part.
So,
Yeah, I'm sure,
Okay.
right, so, yeah,
you know,
you're looking at what? Oh, well,
Well,
I guess I should look at the
improvement,
CIP
yeah,
report. to see.
improvements, I don't know what, I think it's on the CIP, so,
what do you need to?
for
know?
government buildings.
Yeah,
Yeah.
2 points, very important points. You can't just take money out of that.
Understood, Kelly, we
You
have,
have to vote, okay, some of the accounts you can, but most of them you can't.
Mhm.
So the other thing is, this happened last year, and you better make sure you check with the attorney on this to double check. But my recollection from what he has said in the past is that if you have a warrant article for a specific item and it fails, you can't spend money on that item from anywhere in the budget. It's the no means no rule. So if you have a warrant article, to paint the library, you can't, and it fails, you can't take money from the operating budget and paint the library. So that, and that's, we had 2 warrant articles last year that were amended for that very reason, down to $1, so that they wouldn't fail. And so that if there was money in the operating budget, it could be spent there. And the one thing for the fire department that failed, we couldn't spend money on, because nobody did that to that article. So that, again, you need to double check with the attorney, but I have heard him say that more than once.
I'm just trying to have a sense of. The things that need to be done in this town and how we're gonna be able to accomplish it. Within the means that we have, you know, and how these. You understand,
So, well, it sounds like the warrant article was a strategic decision by the board. Much like, I remember the conversations when Chief Bellion would say, why are you putting us on a warrant article? And the argument was, well, because people always pass stuff to the fire department. People don't necessarily do that for police department, for example, so
okay,
it's kind of a strategic thing, is that right, Steve? Yeah, but yeah, I guess if it fails and that rule holds true, then. I guess there's no repairs being done to the library this year. I mean, that would seem to be the effect, right?
If it should fail, the board is prepared to reach out for grants and see what we can do.
Okay.
We're 100%.
Yeah, that's what the fire department need to do.
Mike?
So
Yeah,
the. Does that mean the money that previously went into government buildings had been earmarked in the past for an expansion of the highway garage? So is that
It
gone then?
was 300,000 for the highway garage addition and 400 to renovate the town offices.
Yeah, but the
Like-
first round was highway garage and the second round was the government offices. Has that changed is the question?
Has it changed? But like, all I can tell you is the two items that are in the CIP plan is a $400,000 item. That is coming up in 2026 to do library, town office, renovate offices. And a $300,000 the same year, 2026, to do the garage addition.
And how much do we have now?
We have now, well, we got two, we found we have another account line around. Having one of the treasures, two accounts, we got 16. One that's $195,154, another one that was specifically earmarked, and you might be able to help with this for something called the, what was it
It
called?
just says highway garage fund, and there's.
And there's $16,000 in there, and we couldn't quite figure out where it came from.
A different garage.
It was left
It was a
over,
different garage.
it was left over from when they built the one we have.
Mike asked a minute ago if the government buildings CIP plan has changed. There's been one change, and that is the plan was to construct a highway garage addition next year. But because of all these other problems, we've already talked about library, we're probably gonna talk about the meeting house. It was decided by the town, I believe, to delay, that's the only change, delay the highway garage by a year. But it's still in there at the estimate of 300,000, which was a good faith estimate pulled together last year.
And the estimate for the repairs to the town office is how much?
That was the same number you've used for quite a while, for a few years.
Yeah,
But the year is not the right, it's not, year can't be right,
But
Sorry,
the year can't be right, right?
well, that's what we've got in the
at
plan.
the
at this
moment,
moment.
we pushed out the highway garage, we haven't yet pushed out the town office, but we may have to.
So
The town office is scheduled for 2026 on the CIP plan.
It goes out right now.
So between now and 26, you want to spend 750,000.
So
So how much is in it currently? All
currently
services.
195 and
16.
16 in total, so whatever those add up to.
So we got to raise another 500,000.
And then, and then we're looking at, recommending 50 this year, 50 next year, and 50 the year after that.
It's the same exact situation you were looking at.
I know, but in the
It
past,
has not changed.
I know, but nobody ever, there was no real money backing that up. It was a philosophical
We're starting to
study.
build up some money, we're correct.
I'm just saying that if you have to spend it in 26, you got to raise another 500,000.
Yeah.
If we were gonna do both in that year, which is
Yes.
obviously unlikely.
Okay.
The highway garage is still teed up first as the priority between the two.
So just so I have some clarification, the fact that there is that line under general government buildings. Means that if the warrant article passes, that can simply end up in that line, correct? Okay.
Any other library questions?
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Have next the trustees of the trust funds, let's see, Cindy here. Anybody speak to that, please, present?
I'm pretty sure I sent the reminder, so maybe I,
All right, well, we'll move on. We'll have to get that back on at some point.
Yeah, does anybody remember what the trustees budget was? Like, does it have a line item in our 23 operating budget?
Yes,
Is that the?
you have in the voice.
it could be for the,
It's just below treasurer.
what page?
Page 2. You'll see.
Yeah.
It's just the Cindy's, it's the clerk, there's another thing.
That's not gonna break the bank.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I said, assuming that that's just a percentage increase.
Yeah. That's what I think.
Okay, so that's all that is.
Yeah, the 2.8%.
And we did use to keep $1 in that line, because sometimes they have legal things. But I didn't see that carried through for this year, because they have things in like the cemetery trust. Are the big, the big funds that you have a lot to do with. In the past, they had to do side trade things. So I think it would be a good idea to keep that $1 there. I don't think, at last I heard, I haven't heard anything lately, but you never know.
I think we asked that $1 go into all the blank
We did that at
spaces.
the beginning, right? So all the blank spaces, I think. We'll put
Oh,
$1,
okay,
yeah.
all right, good.
That's
Okay.
what I remember.
Yeah, because they do have, like I said, that entity, 'cause I used to be a cemetery trustee, and I do know from past experience that there could be a lot of legal stuff. They usually get reimbursed. So it's not, usually you need $1 in there to pass, like, the accountants like to have that $1 in there to pass the money back and forth, and the accountant pass it back and forth.
All right, moving on. Health insurance, do we have anything on that?
I've been getting the quotes in, the health insurance went up they promised not to exceed 9.9% in July of next year. So I had put 8% in the budget. I have to redo the calculations and I'll send the budget committee the latest. Life insurance, we got solid numbers from Health Trust. Life insurance will go up $242. So I'll recalculate that out to the department. And I forget what dental was off the top of my head. But I'll redo those calculations and get our insurance updated.
So we're looking at roughly a 10% increase, somewhere in there.
Yeah, it'll be a little bit more because in our 24 budget, I did 8%. They just gave me 9.9%.
So it'll be a little
Yeah.
bit more cutting in now,
Yeah.
not much, 2%. We can live with that probably.
Budget committee, looks like, that 1,800, I imagine, is just broken out as part of the administrator's report, to this committee, is that what that is? You?
Just need to get your new rate too.
I'm the only one in the state not increasing my raise.
Okay.
They might throw some extra money in. We can really invest. Say by it, quick every other letter.
Go two-sided.
No, I'm not increasing rate.
Appreciate that.
All right, so what we'll do now is, guys here, and what we will do is go through your budget, okay? And I believe we have a handout from last week that supersedes what is in the book. Everybody has that. Oh, did they say the same?
All the changes were highlighted.
Okay.
Yeah, the mechanic lines are the same as in the original book.
Okay, so we can just look at the original book and.
It is page 6.
Page.
Just so we can verify what the numbers are, if somebody can read it, just when you hit it.
I've got the very first line, I've got 71,960.
Yeah.
Okay, if you wanna go through your budget and explain it. Ask you questions.
All right. You really don't need to go through the insurance stuff. Do you?
No.
All right, so. Repair parts. I'm gonna go up on it. We're going up 15,000 this year. To date, this year, we've already spent a little over 8,000. To maintain that week.
You're at 80 through last week, is what you said?
Yeah, a little over 80.
That's where this one says 56,000, is that what you're saying? The expenses and everything.
Yeah.
Yep.
Go through it, okay, thank you.
That was back in August.
Right,
Yeah.
mine is,
Correct.
thank you.
Yeah, so we're going up from 65,000 to 80, an increase of 15,000. Honestly, a lot of the inflation is eaten up part of that as well. We're changing.
Next guy, where do you think you're gonna end up this year on repair and parts?
I'm hoping to come in under 80. Last year, we were so far behind, we had a lot of major repairs. And we have several pieces of equipment that are high risk of.
But I mean, between now and the end of this year, how much,
This year,
how much is that 80, just over 80 that you spent?
it's hard to tell. You know, we just, our Freightliner 10-wheeler, I just had to put $2,000 in it last week for parts for repair we didn't plan on. So it's, I'm hoping we don't have to spend a lot of money, but it's just
Yeah.
hard to tell.
We have the grader that's start back up.
Yeah, you know, the grader's at the end of life, so.
Yep.
Another high risk piece of equipment. Our mechanical repairs, I use that for a sublet. We were gonna increase that some. There was some specialty stuff that we just can't do in the shop, and it just doesn't make sense to purchase the equipment to do it. So we're going from, I'm increasing it another. We're going up 7,000 on it. I've expended that this year. The 2023 budget. Tools and equipment, we're gonna combine the two lines, gonna keep that the same. Fortunately, everything in the shop is working fairly well. One purchase we're gonna have to make is a tire machine, it's just worn out. It's gonna come in under what we have to spend, so.
It's not equipment.
What was,
That's a piece of equipment.
Yeah, I didn't know that was a tool or.
Right, I don't know. But that I didn't play with my brother's Tonka toys. That's the, what these things do.
Gotcha.
That's why I think this thing is funny. So you're basically combining the tools and equipment into one line?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
So good, okay, then you don't have to.
Just to simplify things.
That's good, all right.
It's really all the same for me. We have the wrenches and the heavier equipment, so. Petroleum products, we're going up just to kind of stay with the market prices. Everybody following so far, I'm kind of jumping around, sorry.
uniform seems to be fall under highway 54%, my guess.
Yes.
Carrying.
Yeah, so I think that goes back to, you know, every
One
department.
contract, yeah, no, understood. Just clear enough.
Let's see. So we've got repairs, repair parts. Supplies, we're going up $3,000. Not a big increase considering our price of stuff going up. And that's pretty much it right there. One thing that we do need to address is I've used Hue since April to keep up and we have 55 pieces of mobile equipment, cars, equipment, trucks. The national average is 20 to 25 per mechanic. Ideally, if I didn't have any major breakdowns, I could potentially keep up with 55 vehicles. Also, that's not counting our non-mobile stuff that we run into that needs to be repaired as well. Right now, I'm sharing Hue with Bob. I think we need to keep a part-time position. It's working out really well. Hugh's keeping up with the maintenance and I'm quite sure for the first time in several years, we're on top of our oil changes and preventive maintenance. It's being done as it needs to be done. So that's a consideration. Even if we update some of the equipment, we're still gonna need some part-time help to keep up.
So I guess like, should we be putting in some dollars for a, you know, a halftime position or?
I think we need to, yes.
Right, because you don't want to be necessarily sharing with you.
I don't have a problem sharing here. I mean, I think what everybody outside of us is missing is huge knowledge of this side of the road.
Yeah,
So, and Hugh's been a great benefit. I mean, you want your mechanic fixing things, right?
sure.
You can run and get parts, you can change oil, you can service all this while he's doing major repairs.
Right.
And the notion of maybe farming stuff out. you Can't afford that.
So I guess my question then is how does that affect your ability and your efficiency?
He's available to plow snow, so that's where the big crunch is having everybody in the seat of a plow truck.
Okay.
And he's available to do that. And if I need him out on the highway, I could, the day before, just say, hey, I'm gonna need you. We can coordinate, figure out a plan, so we don't schedule a bunch of services to get done. And I said, no, I want you on the highway that day. We work together, and I don't think we've had any issues transitioning him back and forth. Would you think?
I think it's worked really well.
Yeah.
Like Bob said.
Well, I've seen you guys working, and I know it's working really well. I just want everybody else to hear it.
Yeah.
But can I ask a question? To your question, should we be adding a line item for, let's say, a half-time person's worth of labor in the mechanics budget? So if we do that, we're just sliding it over from the highway department budget. We're not talking a net addition to the town's workforce.
That's correct.
So if you want to reflect the costs in the mechanics budget, you can do that, but you wanna go and reduce that same amount from highway. It's the same, it's a wash in the end, right?
The line is already there, so we just need to
Yeah.
move money.
It's not on the mountain, that's all.
Right.
Matters.
Doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, it can, so you could just as well put it in there, I mean, it would make the bookkeeping more difficult, if you could put it in there. You could put it in the queue, but I mean, it's God, but they get paid different amounts, so.
What's your thought, Carrie, on this?
I'm okay with it just being budgeted to highway and then. Like, the payroll- yeah, the
Yeah.
payroll system. so
You-
that-
you bookkeeping, right?
I'm fine with that. Everybody else okay?
No, we can do it later.
So what I'm hearing too is that
But will that screw up his salary budget? Will it make his salary run over?
It's always gonna show as a negative number because
Yeah.
the payroll system is gonna charge
Right.
the mechanic line and we don't have a budget in there.
Right.
But we know that those wages are budgeted in the highway. But still, the same as we're doing this year, like you have to keep the
Yeah.
surplus in your budget to cover that.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that everybody knows what's going on, so when things happen and we say, well, the budget's only 70, we spend 90. What's
Like
going on?
everything else, we have to call Bob to get anything done this time.
I,
Yeah, he liked it that.
some days I'm like,
I think it probably makes sense to put $1 in there and then run the money, so you can keep track of how much.
That's fine.
And it's just, it gives you some oversight of how much it is.
It does, because Karen is breaking out now, because I get coded different from
Right.
highway.
Oh, we do it over there. Highway, fire,
Yeah.
yeah.
What are we gonna do without you? So you're gonna put a button in this, like the idea? Okay. Yeah.
Guy, a quick question,
Yes.
purely hypothetical question. Do you believe if they don't go with the leases or whatever on the major equipment pieces, do you believe that budget, I want an honest answer, do you believe that this budget is sufficient?
No,
Second question is, what would be sufficient? Just a wild ass guess.
another 80 to 100,000 in parts.
Okay. Would you be surprised to find out that with the proposed leases I've seen so far, there'd be about 120,000 allocated to repairs a year on that? So the question is, would you rather have 120,000 in the budget or 120,000 farmed out to a dealer?
What do you mean farmed out to a dealer?
If there's a lease and the maintenance on the equipment belongs to, it's a responsibility of the dealer that's selling the equipment. Then that money is part of the payments that are made by the town to the leasing company. Whereas if you just did a straight lease purchase or did a loan, then that part is left out of the amount that goes to the dealer. Instead goes into the highway department, into the mechanics department. And there's two reasons why I'm asking the question is. Usually. Dealerships are looking for more money for a repair when they post. Correct. The second usually is that if you're locked into a contract where you're getting repairs from dealer wide. And then you're buying a new piece of equipment, you're more likely, and you get some type of a trade, I won't call it a trade-in, but some type of credit back, then you're still locked into dealer wide, which makes it very difficult to get a competitive number. So I started with the question is the budget too small? You said, yes, I concur. So the question is, if you had $120,000, I hate to put you on the spot, but is it better money to be spent in the highway department, in the mechanics department, or put it out to the dealership?
My understanding is if we lease a new piece of equipment, then we're covered for X amount of years. So if, like our grader, one big concern I have now is our transmission. It's been a problem since I've been here, continually getting worse. If we have to put a transmission in it, we're looking at $70,000 to $90,000. That's a huge chunk of money. And it's due to the age and the hours on it. Our backhoe, very similar, due to the hours and the age. It should already have an engine, according to national averages and statistics, due to the hours. So the warranty, if we buy, let's say we buy a Caterpillar and they say, okay, it's gonna be. You have a warranty coverage for the next 5 years. It's gonna cover the powertrain. It's gonna cover all your major mechanical stuff. We're still gonna be on the hook for brakes and tires and maintenance. But the other concerning thing is the electronics on the newer pieces of equipment and on the diesels, the DEF and the emission systems are very, very costly. That stuff would be covered under the warranty for our length of time. So really, we're not going to be going back to CAT for maintenance. We shouldn't be. And when we do have a breakdown, they're going to be covered at no charge to us for that warranty time. So the way I understand it should be.
And again, the question is that, I mean, I think that the move to advance the replacement on equipment is the appropriate thing to do.
Right.
I've thought that for a long time.
Right.
So I'm not in any way opposed to that. But on the other hand, the question is, if you're gonna keep a piece of equipment 7 or 8 years versus what we used to do, which is 10 or 15 years. Is it really worth $120,000 a year going into that warranty to do it? And is it better spent on the other 50 pieces of equipment that we gotta maintain? So you're buying new equipment, you're gonna replace it, we'll say every 7 years for the sake of argument. You get wear after a certain period of time, a significant wear.
Correct.
And you identify it in the reports that I've seen, I understand. So if you had that money, is the best place to put that money into those pieces to a dealer or into the budget for a mechanic. And I'll throw one other caveat. The other possibility is to do it just for the 2 or 3 largest pieces of equipment and not for every truck and everything else that you're buying. So I'm raising the issue tonight. I hope we're going to talk about it again before we finish this deal. But those are some of the issues that I'm looking at and thinking about with respect to leasing and lease purchases and straight loans and where the money's going.
And I think what you're getting at is you want to try to suss out, an apples to apples comparison, basically over there.
At least understand it better.
And I had a question on that as well, and I think that'd be a good transition, because I think that's what, a lot of the time tonight will be to hear about what equipment, prioritized equipment, what's been looked at, because we hear about these leases and purchase, we just kind of want to talk about it. I guess from a practical standpoint, I know in my personal life, you have a vehicle, and yeah, it's covered under warranty, but now it's a pain in the butt to get all the way over to wherever the dealer is to drop it off, and then they may have to wait a few days and this and that and the other thing. So I guess, is the confidence that something breaks and can they get it in right away? Are they gonna fix it in a timely manner? Is it gonna be down when it's down? If you're in the middle of something, I guess I'm just trying to understand. Whereas if it's here, presumably you could reshuffle and work on it and perhaps find your way to the part.
But here's a scenario right now, we have a football load loader in the middle of a grader. That have a lot of electronics, basically chassis computer, transmission computer, our John Deere backup had electronic issues and wouldn't go into gear. We do not have the capability here to diagnose. You're looking at potentially a $20,000 scan tool just to communicate with it before I can do any repairs or any diagnostics.
Gotcha. So there's still gonna be this kind of delay. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you're always gonna have that, where if you spend that money, you're gonna get your foot in the door. And there's gonna be a wall. Once you hit that wall, you're gonna have to go to the dealer anyways.
That's okay,
And
good.
it just don't, and it's, you gotta update it. This last year, we had Vogel come up. And the guy was here all day and we rebooted 5 computers that are on our loader. And re-updated. What'd that cost?
It was $2,000.
He never took a wrench out of his truck.
Yeah, and it was a kind of like your cell phones, you get an update every now and then. There are updates for the equipment, for the computers and the equipment in the vehicles.
So we can buy some software, only so much. It's only gonna allow us to do so much before we still have to go. But he's gonna have a harder time getting the parts from the actual dealer. The vendor that we would order the parts from is the people we're buying the trucks from. They're gonna service their in-house customers before they ship the those parts to the outside people.
So the concern I have, it sounds like. It's gonna be there regardless of whether, and it actually may be reduced. By having this relationship with what you're saying, because there may still be a delay. Mechanic around this electronic stuff, right?
Electronics is what really driving. Moving towards this, and we just can't get the money to spend $30,000 on software every year, so 5 to 10 to keep it updated.
Gotcha.
Yeah. It's really expensive to stay on top of all that.
It's a new world of equipment.
Right, the so when you put tanks that take this third diesel forward, well, the heaters are not, they're $5,000. And the hose is about $300 a piece in there, 160 long, so all that is a lot of cost, and that's covered under a lot of these warranties, unless you buy extra standard, cat, you buy kind of like the, a standard year and hours for that machine, so it's not, you can just buy that, the better end of it, so it covers more stuff, which it reduces. What we're looking to try to do is just focus more on maintenance, that's where your savings is, if you can just do PMs and not major repairs, that's where your costs are driven out, would you agree? Just through your major repair.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, you start dropping.
Expensive parts.
Yeah, I priced out a transmission grader, it was $75,000 not installed, dropped in a box.
So does some of this have to do with the fact that we're a very small shop?
No, it's nothing
to do with that at all.
It's just the cost of everything in the world.
Mhm.
And what's the most affordable way to do it? Is it cheaper for you to change oil in your truck or rebuild the transmission?
Mhm.
That's what we're down to. Cheaper change you on.
Yeah.
Well, the other change is that, Bob's mentioned to me is that they just don't have this equipment sitting around waiting to be purchased up. Everything is built to order because they don't have any inventory out there. So that could raise our cost, the end user cost, and the time to get it too, so.
Always on a wait.
Another question would be, I agree about electronics, there's no doubt in my mind, that electronics can be bad 2 weeks after you get the truck. There's a warranty, but whether you get them to honor the warranty, I know from past experience, they don't know how to work. They look at it and say, it's working fine, send it back, it's not working. So the question is, electronics in particular, is it possibly going to warranty just the electronics? I'm less concerned about the wear items like engines, motors, gears, all this stuff. Only because if you got an extra 100,000 in the account, which, you know, if you look at everything that's in there, it's not labor cost. It's only 140,000 total, so it would almost double how much money you had in the budget. So if you do have a part that needs to be replaced, it's expensive. It's either going to be factored into the dealer's costs that they're passing into you, or it's going to be in your budget. And you got more flexibility. That's all I'm suggesting. I don't know. I'm raising it as an issue, and I would raise the issue of whether you can get an electronics warranty. I've never heard of one, but I know that I doubt there's a municipal garage anywhere in the state that you wouldn't go in, or any other type of garage, bus company, whatever, where you won't find the electronics is the number one issue. So if there's a way to get a warranty on electronics, I would do it in a heartbeat. And then the other piece is, I don't know that we finalized what the list of equipment is going to be as part of the leasing. But I don't see the grader and a bucket loader or backhoe as being the same type of equipment as a truck.
Correct.
So I would like information before we resolve the issue. And I'm raising the issues. That's all I'm doing tonight.
Right. Unfortunately, like the grader, if the transmission fails tomorrow, we don't have the ability to replace it in our shop. We just don't have the overhead cranes, the equipment to do it. So there would be a lot more expense for me to do it. I would gladly, but we're not set up.
And that may be part of the solution, is just pick the ones that need it most, as opposed to everything.
You may not even be able to get the parts at this point in time.
But right now, the grader is definitely.
Can I ask how old is the grader?
2010.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
I believe it's a 2002, so
Okay,
22
it's
years
not
old.
CIP, I didn't have your CIP, okay,
2004 on the year end was.
The grader?
2004.
okay.
But
You know how many hours, so you go by hours or miles?
Hours.
Hours, do you know how many hours it is?
11,230.
What?
11,230.
All right, and then my other question is. I know I have this issue with personally, because I've noticed that if you are not a dealer and you want parts for your car, sometimes you can't get them. One time I had a part that I wanted to get Dan Jameson to fix for me, and he couldn't because the dealer wouldn't let him have it because he wasn't a dealer. So I don't know if that, it sort of sounds to me a little bit like that's the issue that you have too, because you're not a dealer, so you don't get access to some of the same stuff.
Certain things, especially the electronics and programming and
Yeah.
software upgrades and stuff,
Yeah.
we don't have
Yeah, okay,
access.
all right, that's what I kind of figured, but I just kind of, you know.
But it's just general mills of parts we
Yeah,
have.
and then so my other question is, if you buy a vehicle, regardless of what it is, but obviously the grader is the most important. If you buy it outright, can you buy a service contract for it? It's similar to what you get for a lease?
Typically, if you buy it or lease it, the warranty is the same.
Okay.
You're getting your factory warranty.
So the big thing about to me, though, if we want a lease, that's a loan in disguise. You gotta get a 60% voter approval on that, whereas the purchase, you only need 50% plus one vote.
That's.
So if you get 59%, it fails, and you can't take it out of the budget anywhere else either. So that's my big concern. I had one more question, but I forgot what it was. No, I'll think of it later. Go ahead.
My concern on, I don't know if this is what we're talking about, but we clearly need a grader. There's no question about it. And if we put it in with 3 other pieces of equipment and people vote it down, then we don't get a grader. So my concern, and maybe we're not talking about this right now, but how can we set it up so that we can make a strong case for the grader and maybe the backhoe too? Those are the 2 most critical pieces, right?
Well,
We have 2 other trucks that are.
And trucks too, so can we make a strong case? For whatever it is we come up with, or do we need to separate them out? Because what I would hate to see us not get a grader. I'll tell you. Just aside from not for my role on this committee, but just as a citizen of the town.
Well, I'd like to hear, because I just, I've heard about this grader, but I would like to hear about, the needs. Immediate, has to happen this year, would like, just.
The grader had happened last year.
It did, okay.
Yeah, so the need is getting stronger and stronger. The biggest thing is Volvo doesn't make a grader anymore. So therefore, they don't make parts. And the older they get, the less parts there are to find. And our, when the Volvo rep stopped last week and,
Chadwick was in last week.
yeah.
So what we have now is a Volvo. grader?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Their lead mechanic for 30 years, who is now an outside salesperson. Said, I hope nothing fails on it because you're not gonna be able to get parts.
Yeah.
Because we need a grader. There's.
Oh, yeah. That's the most useful piece of equipment right there.
So the four pieces that Guy and I have talked lengthy about and identified are. The oldest truck in our fleet and what you guys call a 1-ton. That it took Guy a month and a half between three different vendors. Out west to get parts for the front end because Dodge does not make those parts anymore for that Euro truck. And it's been nothing but a maintenance nightmare. The backhoe and the grader, the four pieces that we just don't think that they're gonna make it too much longer. Without substantial amount of money or to a point where it's just not worth putting any money into and then we have an anchor.
Well, that's a 3-top, right?
No, 1-ton backhoe, grader and a 10-wheel dump.
The 10-wheel, right, that's the other one that we'll just.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's the four pieces.
those are the four that we
Yeah,
have.
we,
Yeah, from a cost perspective, just if you were buying those, the current price tag on all of those, so everybody knows. The Dodge thing, that 1-ton that he's talking about, that's 165,000. The grader is 321,000. The backhoe 170. And the converting a 6-wheel dump truck to a 10-wheel dump truck is 300,000.
well, we
Well,
got a 10-wheeler that we
Would
bought.
you, I need you to address the why a 10-wheeler versus a 6, so everybody gets the why you
So,
go in that direction.
The price difference between a 10-wheeler and a 6-wheeler is $15,000 to $18,000, which is not a lot of money. The 6-wheeler doesn't have very much value on a trade-in at the end of the day, as a 10-wheeler does. A 6-wheeler does more damage to your dirt roads than 10-wheelers. 6-wheeler has more front end issues than a 10-wheeler. They burn the same amount of fuel, but with a 10-wheeler, you haul twice as much material. So you're actually savings in costs and they don't go through the tires as fast. There's far more benefits that really offset that overall gap between the cost of a 6-wheeler versus a 10-wheeler. To not have more 10-wheelers, and especially the distance that we have to travel. If you're in North Canaan and you're on Bradbury and you were to run out of sand and you'd have to come back to our pit to get loaded up and you run a 6-wheeler, it's an hour turnaround time. From West Farms Road back to our pit, back to West Farms Road area, it's an hour turnaround time. If you're running a 6-wheeler, if you have a 10-wheeler, you're lessening your trips back and forth. That's less iron running on the road. That's less work that's being done to those trucks and you're getting as much accomplished. You know, it's 2 loads with a 6-wheeler to hit.
So if we would have, for instance, if we would have say that we needed to buy all of these things in 2024, that would be a $956,000 article that we need to raise, those 4 vehicles. The lease cost per year is going to be on those 4 $169,600 versus laying out 950 now. We're going to amortize it 169,599 over 7 years. So that's the trade-off that we're making. And at the end of the transaction, after 7 years, we're gonna have a substantial, we believe, buyback trade-in.
Yeah, the dealer, if we were to stay with a certain vendor, he's said he would guarantee $110,000 to $130,000 buyback after 7 years. That is for a 10-wheeler. 6-wheelers have no value. People that buy the 6-wheel dump trucks are municipalities.
So you get a third of it back after
7.
7 years.
That per vehicle, could you expound a little bit
That's
on the others?
per 10-wheeler.
Yeah,
For 10,
Yeah, not a 6-wheeler.
but I mean, like, what about the backhoe?
Right.
That's a different dealer.
Oh,
Yeah, the 10-wheelers, that's through a truck dealership.
sure.
The backhoe and grader are through an equipment dealer.
Can you just reiterate the price? The 10-wheeler was 300,000
Yes.
and a grader is 321.
One.
Wow, seems like a bargain on a grader.
I don't know.
That is well,
I got no clue.
no, it is the smallest all drive grader that Caterpillar makes, which is equivalent to the same size as the grader we're running now.
And I
Yeah,
wanted to suggest a little bit of caution with us deciding that the grader is more important than the pickup, because we have no idea what they do or how often they do it. So to me, the trucks are almost more valuable than the grader. So you want the road plow.
They're equally important.
So, and it's very, the reason why these four were ultimately decided on, I'll say, right, CIP. Was they're equally important. Your fleet is in terrible shape. And you can't just pick one and live with that and let the other go.
And these are the 4 for worst.
Yeah.
So I mean, I think what Karen was saying was maybe we should be, if we're gonna do it as warrant article, we set it up as 4 separate warrant articles, not all as one, but.
So if something gets, so something we don't lose it all.
And I want the 10
I agree.
So we don't lose it all.
Right.
Yeah.
Really want the grade.
It was perfect. Woods.
Yeah, no, I mean.
On your tax,
What's that, Mike?
impact on your tax.
Buying the grader and the backhoe from the equipment, do they have a similar kind of buyback,
No.
trade in after the 7-year lease?
No.
No, so you're just
Right,
walk
because-
away.
Right, because the problem is with stuff like that, they unfortunately, they do depreciate, like everything. But in the municipality world, it's a pretty good chance if you're. The trucks are more prone to have a single operator versus a lot of the equipment in municipality roads have multiple operators. And so they look at on that and what they're designed to do. I mean, that grader is meant to tear up the earth.
Yeah.
And so is the backhoe, where the trucks are meant to drive on top of it.
Right.
So they live a little bit of a different life.
So at the end of the 7 years, you just walk away and then you make it.
Right, the grader, the grader could bring in probably hold its value a lot longer. Because the readiness to obtain a grader, I had a vendor call me the other day and asked if we're looking at stuff and could we interested in a used grader, and I said absolutely not. But, cause he can't get any new ones, and so it's a year and a half, 18 months, and they'll only build it if you order it.
Right, I mean,
You know, so there's nothing on the lot readily available, and if you find something that's used, it's beat to death.
now, at the end of our 7 years, assuming you haven't beat it to death, we can buy it.
We could buy it, or we could turn it back in.
If you feel, I mean, at that point, we would be making a decision.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, financially, it may make sense to do that in 7 years and,
You haven't beat it up.
well, yeah. But I mean, if it's, you know, everything's all based on how the market goes, what's down, whether, you know, if they have a bunch sitting on the lot, then your value is nothing. But they don't have any, so what you have is worth way more.
Thank you.
Just to separate out the equipment, like, you know, the grader, the backhoe versus the 1-ton and the 10-wheeler. What are the lifespans on the 10-wheeler? If you would buy it and you would say, okay, how long can we keep one of them on the road?
So the lifespan in our line of work,
Yes, like if we bought it, how long would you expect to be able to keep it on the road?
before you start spending a lot of money on repair, 7 years.
Oh, okay, so they've got this all dialed in.
They do.
As far
They
as.
do, because the vendor will tell you flat out, they will not give you a guarantee after the 7th year.
Yeah, okay.
And they'll tell you you don't wanna own them in 8, 9, 10, 11.
And so these 10-wheelers and the 1-ton, these still have.
One ton, see, the 1-ton's a little bit different, so, and we have to remove the 1-ton, and we'll just call it a 6-wheel dump truck.
Oh, okay.
Because when I say 1 ton, you're gonna call up Lebanon Ford and say, give me a price of a 1 ton.
Well, they give you two things, yeah.
Which is, it's gonna be $30,000 cheaper than
Yeah.
what I need to buy, so I'm definitely buying, you know, a smaller version of a 6-wheel dump truck.
So you just want 10 wheels, basically.
That, when we originally started talking about this, I wanted to replace our tired 10-wheeler with a 10-wheeler. I wanted to replace the 1 ton with another 1 ton. I wanted to replace one of my other older 6-wheelers with a 10-wheeler, but not get rid of that older 6-wheeler, because then I could have a backup truck. Right now, the backup truck is the Dodge 1 ton that is dead in the garage right now. And so that backs up a big 6-wheeler, so we go from 16 to 20 yards of material to 4. You know, I equate it to having a school bus route. You got 72 kids on that bus and the bus goes down and your backup's a minivan.
Yeah.
It take a long time to get those kids to school. And that's where we're at.
Claude, have you got anything you wanna add? Cause you've been in this conversation with these gentlemen since April, gosh.
Right. Initially, earlier this year, Bob and I didn't think we wanted to do this, and this. In the bigger picture, plan last summer was to try to lease 7 pieces of equipment to replace the 7 that are in the worst condition. That was a price tag that I think everybody in the committee felt was a little too high a price to pay all in 1 year to start leasing all 7. So we had Guy and Bob do a thorough assessment of the equipment condition. He gave us a very thorough report, which Guy updated recently. And they assessed, they took a hard look at the equipment and said, well, the truth is out of the 7, these 4 are the most important. They're either in the worst condition or the most important to our day-to-day operations. And agreed that it might make sense to look at leasing the 4, which we can do for the price you called out, the $169,000 per year lease payments. And delay a little bit on the others through Guy's efforts to repair them, etc. So it's like it's a middle ground. If we were not leasing the 4, we could probably this town could probably only afford to buy 2 of these pieces of equipment with cash, you know, through out of capital reserves and so on. And when the other 2 don't work, we either have people who can't do their jobs. We have to rent equipment, we're forced to rent equipment at a higher price. We have downtime, we have roads we cannot maintain, etc. So the 4 pieces of equipment being proposed to lease right now is, in my mind, a middle ground. We'd love to have gotten 7 pieces because we have 7 pieces of equipment that are in trouble and that are needed. We're gonna go for 4 and see how much we can accomplish again next year. So that's kind of where we're at right now. As far as the maintenance agreements, that's not really a CIP. There's been a lot of discussion. The CIP committee, I'll be honest, is not in a position to assess whether a maintenance agreement, service agreement is the right thing to do or not. I really tee that up to both the budget committee and the select board. We're looking at what can we afford to acquire, how much money is in the bank, how much money can we reasonably expect to set aside in terms of capital reserves. And that's where we're at right now, is that for the coming year, start the leasing program with these 4. And by the way, we'll have a year's experience under our belt with that, and by next year, and we can decide whether we want to lease, say, 3 more pieces, or whether we want to drop back to the old approach of accumulating cash and living with whatever we can buy.
Right, which is what we're planning for.
That's what we're
Planning for purchase.
At the moment, our plan shows these 4, and then purchase what we need after that. A
Right.
year from now, we might alter that a little bit, all of us together.
Yeah.
So that's about it.
Right, I just have a couple of things I want to say quick. I've been with Claude and the other members of the CIP committee and Jack and Carrie Ann and these guys working through this over the last several months. And you know, I personally have a very high confidence level that they've done a really good job of assessing the status of the fleet and you know, what we need to improve the service long-term, short-term and long-term for the community. Mark, you had an opportunity to run in there and check out some of this equipment and stuff.
Yeah,
What
we had
do you
a
think?
We had a late night, that
Yeah.
never go.
We did.
Yeah, we were there till like 11 o'clock.
Yeah.
Yes, I wanted to ask you, what size wing does that grader have with that?
Honestly, I don't know.
Like plowing?
Yeah, well,
The one that they have now,
Yeah. No.
we've never had a.
No,
it's-
Yeah, years ago, they might have run it, but.
Guessing it'd be.
they've used it within the last 10 years.
Yeah.
On the wind tower on there right now.
No, it's probably 12 or 14 foot.
Well, I just want to add that, that grader with that thing on there, I'm just gonna use this for an example. If we get, say, we got like, 2 snowstorms right back to back to each other, 2 footers, something like that. And, and the trucks can only do so much, pushing back to back roads, so on and so forth. After the storms are all done, take the trucks off the road, give them a break, take that grader, put it right up there, start pushing back these back roads with that.
That is the plan
Yeah,
with a new grader. We're just waiting for the final quote for a plow for that.
right.
To come in.
That would work pretty good.
Yeah, but what's your take on the assessment that these guys made of the equipment?
Agree with it.
Huh?
Agree with it.
Yeah, okay. Like,
So just for clarity, the 4 pieces are what?
a Dodge 1-ton van, which is now gonna be a 6-wheeler, a grader. A 10-wheel dump truck. and
That's
a
the one that's
back-
shot.
Truck
Sorry?
number
The
9,
2013 Freightliner.
Okay, yep, got it.
truck 3, truck 9.
I wouldn't call it shot, I would call it end of life and high risk of expensive repairs. It's nickel and diming us right now.
Okay, so again, I'm lost. So the 1-ton is pretty easy. I show 1 Freightliner in your statement of how the equipment is, it looks dead. And I assume that that's the Freightliner that is proposed to be replaced, and that's truck,
Nine.
That's number 9.
yeah. Truck, wait a minute, yes. So it's the Dodge Ram. Truck number 9, which is Port Fair. And then the grader and. What,
Back.
the backhoe?
Yeah.
Okay.
John Deere back.
Okay. So then the only other questions I have about it would be. Did anybody look at just taking a loan on? Because as near as I can tell from the paperwork you gave us before, it's a 5% interest rate. Which strikes me as higher than a municipality should be paying for interest rates. And again, if you could get a warranty and you could get it for 3% less, I think it's probably worth doing it. But I'm just asking you if anybody's looked at it. And that's about it. And I really don't think, the question I think that Karen asked or implied anyway. If you go with 7 pieces, it's gonna be a hell of a reaction.
Yeah, we never planned it.
I think that the 7 pieces came up to everybody was curious about. We were looking at industry standard end of life. And that's where we've got a 2016, a 2017 that are all in a 2014, they're all right there. Borderline, so if we do the industry standard of 7 years, well, we have 7 pieces of equipment now that are at end of life.
So let's
And so
assume,
we broke it down to the 4 worst ones that are just killing us, nickel and dime.
so let's assume that we're only talking about those 4.
Yeah.
Okay? And I think the number roughly was $190,000 to cover that, somewhere in that range.
169, right?
What is
Annual lease payment, 169.
169? And how much we're spending, putting into capital reserves before?
170,
Yeah, so we're gonna double it.
pretty much.
And it was just the 4 pieces of equipment, so it's not gonna be a home run, no matter whether it's 4 pieces or 7.
Sorry, we need to clarify that now.
Yes,
The lease cost of 4 pieces of equipment for a year will be the same, about the same as we were putting in the capital reserves. However, money, we still need to continue putting some money in the capital reserve. By other things like a roadside mower or a roller or other equipment that's not being leased. So yes, capital funding will need to go up quite a bit, almost double, yes. But I wanted to clarify this because
That's fine.
the lease payments do not cover all equipment, just these 4 pieces for now.
If I'm a person that doesn't know anything, sitting at the deliberative session, I see last year it was 170, this year it's 340, I'm gonna squawk.
I understand.
So, and I understand the need, it has nothing to do with the need, I agree with the need, and I'm just trying to think of what the best way is to move from point A to point B.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm suggesting anything else I could think of, whether it's a loan versus a lease, whether it's a lease purchase, whether it's a lease with a trade-in value. I think you ought to look at all of them, and you gotta have a plan that's not gonna terrify people. And we already know that the rest of the budget looks about the same. That's it.
And so from just the funding mechanism, we'd be talking about, let's say we broke it out into 4 warrant articles. These are warrant articles that are basically raising the money to pay for the lease payment. But that would be for 7 years, right? You'd have to have the funding this year for all 7 years. So can you do that?
You can encumber it.
You can encumber it.
You're basically building it, and the law allows you to build it, so it's a time payment plan, and I want to agree. I think Stephen would probably agree with this. I mean, it's not our job to pick it.
Yeah.
It's the selectmen's job to pick it. All I'm asking for is that people look at 5 or 6 different options on how to put the deal together before they spend the money, and try to keep the number down as much as possible.
And I think one other thing that always goes back in my head, Mike, is there were 170 would have allowed us to purchase some vehicles, some new equipment for 2024, not the 4 new pieces that we're talking about.
It would have bought the one time, the cheapest vehicle, that's the problem.
Yeah, sorry?
It would allow us to purchase outright the cheapest vehicle before that.
And we wouldn't have been able to acquire the other 3 pieces if we had just stuck to funding at 170 level.
Right.
But that's not what we did. I was around last year. Okay.
Yeah.
So what we did was we goosed it up over a period of years up to 250.
Right.
Plus the lease or the loan on the grader.
Right.
But rather than telling the frog, hey, jump into this boiling pot of water, you're giving the frog 3 or 4 years to get used to being boiled.
Understood.
Okay,
Sure.
so that was the concept behind it, and if you start at $1 million, yeah, the frog's gonna figure that out quick.
Understand.
So roughly in that capital reserve now, you have for 170,000. We put in last year, because we spent 88, 89 on the.
About 189 is in there now. In capital reserve.
So you played the trick with PD, you would have been able to buy your backhoe last year. Because PD only had a couple grand in there until the warrant article went in. Would have been the same situation as what you do with the highway. Because we only put like, we only had like 89, 80, 90,000 to do it. You know what I'm saying?
What's the PD?
Police department. So on their warrant article last year, what they did, I believe we boosted it in the budget hearings. They only had a couple $1,000s into that account, so that warrant article would have got shot down, they would have been buying that 3rd cruiser. This year, because they didn't have the funds.
They bought 2 cruisers last year.
No, that money was encumbered from the previous.
And now they're skipping a year. Is it,
No, they bought a new one this year.
and they're not planning to buy one in 24. So it averages out to 1 per year. But you're talking about playing a trick there. The capital reserve balance is now down to, it's negligible. It's around $1,000 because they bought the new cruisers. So they've consumed almost all of the capital reserves to buy cruisers.
They wouldn't have been able to buy that cruiser last year, because they only had a couple $1,000, and Steve, I believe it was you. It increased proposed to increase that money to go into that capital reserve. Out of that. So they wouldn't have had enough money if it was just going through, and that warrant article would have failed. With the money that we put into that. They
To
wouldn't-
stay for a cruiser, yeah,
They wouldn't have bought that, they would have had to buy it by the third of.
Well, that's true of any department, any year or warrant article to save money fails, you're right, they can't buy the equipment.
that's right.
That would be true of any department.
So somebody better do a good sales job.
Ryan did, he got 3 cruises for cheap.
No, I mean, he did a great job. He saved us time training.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, I mean, he's in good shape.
The other thing that really need to put it out here, how much each one of these is costing per 1,000 on them. What it's gonna cost your taxpayers. Each individual one, right? And give the accurate numbers, and it seems like there's a lot of legwork to do as far as what loan. What kind of lease, what kind of capital lease it's gonna be, and Mike's right, you gotta start really looking at that stuff, You know, I realize it's kind of early in the game, but it's getting late in the game, it's arbitrary numbers, but.
We get pretty late in the game as far as that.
Because you want to put some of that explanatory information in the warrant, articles, we can know exactly what they're, okay, here's what it looks like, okay.
Is that our responsibility?
To write the warrant article?
No.
No.
But I need this information.
So,
Like,
usually it's a select board.
Oh, okay.
So it's gonna raise it $1.64.
Okay, very good. Glad to hear that.
So,
A cup of coffee on a Sunday morning, we can sit down and bang right out.
You want somebody to sit in and help you, I can do it.
so like, what you see, like the quad said is 189, I think you said 189,000 left in the capital reserve for the highway department. Right? And the CIP is gonna recommend maintaining the 107, you know, assuming we lease the 4 pieces.
Yeah.
But you're still going to recommend 170 again.
200.
Oh, 200, okay, and then the idea is maybe in a year from.
200 going into the capital reserve for future purchase,
Right,
and then the 169
for the lease.
for the lease.
I get it, all right, that's what I was getting at, because you had said earlier, the strategy was after these 4, let's catch up on these 4.
Well, see now-
Then maybe we go back to.
Well, this
5.
is the.
So they would be down payments on others.
So this is the thought, rather than, you know, in a couple of next year, when we get to 25, rather than. Purchasing another 6, replacing the Western Star number 7 for $300,000.
Right.
We could theoretically put that on a lease, so rather than have to pay 300,000 out of the CIP, we would have a relatively small. Lease number, I don't know, for 40,000 a year. Versus the,
And you can take that out of the capital. reserve.
no,
No, I didn't think so.
no, you'd have to go from.
Right.
But it would lower ultimately the amount of money that you need to keep to continue funding for future purchase.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, because we had this conversation today and we made a decision to run as lean as we could. In terms of putting money into the capital reserve that would meet our. Obligation to the community to make sure that we did not have that we had enough money. In the funds. To purchase the things that we were planning to purchase. Right. Going forward.
Presumably smaller ticket items, I guess.
About the same.
Is that right?
A lot of $300,000 items in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of $300,000 items, yeah.
Yeah, loader and trucks.
Yeah, 2025, 330, 2026, 585, 27, 550,
Those are totals of
482, and 2028, those are the upcoming purchases.
And nothing's going down.
And, you know, so it's a tough, we're in a tough spot.
Need a bake sale.
Financially, we need a big sale. That's why we got PTC, we gotta figure out how to get more money into this town. We gotta get cranking on that, Mike.
The discussion has brought a couple of things to mind for me. The problem we're facing is not. Whether we should be leasing equipment, the problem we're facing is not, it's not, the capital reserves. The root cause. There are 2 root causes of the problems we're facing, after what I've seen in the last 4 to 6 months. One has been the very high level of inflation on equipment in the last couple of years. We've said it in the past, nobody said it yet tonight, but we were looking at 15 to 20% increases per year in the cost of heavy equipment. After COVID, you know, worldwide supply chain problems, you name it, but the cost, the basic cost of this equipment has skyrocketed. The other half of our challenge is that we have an aging fleet that's in bad shape. So what is all, if you put those two together, it means we need a lot of pieces of equipment, and their costs have gone way up. That's the root cause of the problem. All this discussion about we buy, we lease, how much money we save, is all strategies on how best to address those challenges. We need the equipment, and it costs a hell of a lot of money these days. That's really what we're up against.
That's not just highway equipment.
Well,
Fire trucks, David,
just saying on what Bob just said, the truck that, the Ram 2022 that we bought last year. That cabin chassis for the same exact truck, same seat, same color, same everything, is $14,000 more this year.
What was the original cost?
That was just under 150.
So now it's 160 or something.
and that's this year's 10%. That's last year, the 20%.
So in that amount of time, our body package, which, so when we buy a truck, we're buying a cabin chassis. So I'm gonna go to you and I'm gonna buy this cabin chassis, and I'm gonna go to you and I'm gonna buy the plow and the body package. The plow and body package is just under $80,000 for that. It's $100,000 for a cabin. This is from the vendors. I just had 2 emails that come in this day, and all the pits that we buy aggregates from. January 1st, all their prices are going up 7% increase.
So they cover their equipment.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and that's exactly what was in the email. Exactly what was in the email. And they have, Pike has 5 mechanics that work full-time down there. And they can't get the software to do stuff. They have to go back to the dealer. You know, we just got a notice on that Ram. There's certain stuff we just can't do, and the dealers won't give you the software to do it. You were forced to go to them.
So it seems like, you know, ultimately there's gonna be some warrant articles, whether it's 1 or 4, and it's gonna be based upon what. The decision is, makes the most sense, and I agree with Mike, you know, to the extent that. Loan can be looked at, and so I guess, you know, from our perspective. At some point, we're gonna have to look at those warrant articles and decide whether we support them. I mean,
And-
ultimately, that's our job.
Right, and with that being said, if this, you know, this is a slippery slope, everybody can just say, screw that. Well, then you gotta go back to his. Because now to keep this stuff going down the road, his parts and repair numbers need to go up.
Well, we have to convey this to the voters.
Yeah, I think
It's critical the communication, how this gets done to the voters. It's just critical. Yeah.
People just look at the numbers like,
Yeah.
oh,
Right.
But that's up to our elected select board guys. They're gonna come up with how to do that. Right?
I agree with what Claude said. Inflation is terrible.
Oh, we'll present our version of it.
But having said
these are
that,
warrant.
I think it's our job, it's the selectmen's job, it's the budget committee's job to make sure the selectmen and the CIP committee. And anybody else and their grandmother has looked at and tried to come up with the most cost-effective options in order to pull this thing off. And I am terrified as much as you are and as much as you are about the electronics. As I have not in 13 years, I didn't see anything that was effectively managing electronics, and we were just basically running equipment half-assed because electronics didn't work. So I understand that, but I'm asking and begging that people look for something that's a little bit more cost-effective. Because, you know, if we take the 2 numbers we got a few minutes ago, it's 2.5 times increase. So, and we need the equipment. And we need to do it as smart as we possibly can to save as much money on repairs as we can. And you may not have enough money in your budget, even if we do all that. Because all the problems you've got with these 7 pieces of equipment, you got them with the other 50 pieces of equipment. So that means you've got to build up the maintenance budget no matter what. So that's why I'm asking you to compare all of those options, you know, in the paperwork that Bob has shared with us. It was like 3 or 4 different options on how to lease purchase, how to get a trade-in value. They're all over the place, okay? And I'm sure we're gonna get a final version sooner or later. When we do, we can take a look at it. But it's in all of our best interest to have good equipment. It's all of our best interest to have it so we can manage it effectively for repairs. We did not do it effectively for repairs for the better part of 5 years. A lot of reasons why that happened, but the long and short of it is, I know it, you know it. We all knew that that was going on. So we gotta fix that. But we also can't kill the cat. So that means that we're gonna have to be able to defend, or somebody's gonna have to be able to defend, that this is in fact the best plan. And you may not, like the questions because it will delay the process. And God knows, there isn't much time left. You got 2 months and 3 weeks. to
Well,
pull
I
this
mean,
together.
And Mike, everything you're saying is spot on, I think, as well. So, but I think, whether we buy or we borrow, at least. You won't have a firm number until you actually go and make that deal, and we can't make that deal until we actually have the approval to do it. So, there's always, whether, even in the past, you never have a firm thing, so you plan for what you know. And then you try to get there, so.
You want a suggestion?
I'm gonna get it anyways, Mike, so.
Absolutely.
So here's the suggestion, it's all in the wording. A warrant article could be non-lapsing. B, it has to have caps. Okay? You don't necessarily have to define every term that's in the deal. So if you, let's say for the sake of argument, you had a warrant article for a $200,000 piece of equipment. And it would have debt service not to exceed X number of percent or something along those lines. That doesn't mean that you can't go out and restructure that deal as long as it fits within the language.
That's the point I was making. So.
And that is something I think you can sell the public. We're going to keep trying to cut the cost as we go forward. And that can help. But you got to be prepared to try to look at all those different options.
Just another thought. So some of the, in my opinion, some of the reason we are where we are is because this committee, the select board, and Mike Sampson in particular, worked very hard over the last 5, 6, 7 years to keep the town tax rate level, because the school was going up 7-10% a year, which was killing the overall budget. And you created a document a few years ago that showed that we were level and what the school was doing. And I think people in town have to be told at this point, we got to take our medicine. We have been putting this off. We had a cavity for a long time and we put it off and we put it off and put it off. Now we got to pull the tooth. And that's the bottom line. I'm sure, I'm sorry to be so blunt, but that's the blunt message. We're in the boat we're in because we were trying to help everybody by keeping our side, town side down.
It's not a mechanic for almost 3 years.
I know.
I mean, so it's not just.
I understand that, but the school
I
is
think Mike's point is that we need to.
part of the
put that
message.
in front of
It
the
doesn't
people.
matter where we're
We
getting.
need, that information needs to be presented.
We just have to show people
You know,
it's
we
there.
are where we are, this is where we are, we can't dodge it anymore, we've gotta move forward somehow, and that's the plan. You had a conversation with Amanda about the school budget, right? It's
Monday.
off the record, but.
Right, I just asked her, at this point, do you know what the school budget is shaping up to look like? And she said, well, with declining enrollment, my goal is to be level funding. And that was a quote. Now, I don't know what that's gonna turn out to mean. Is level funding up 3 or 5 or level or down?
A subsequent conversation, this afternoon, she gave me roughly 2 to 3%
Right.
last year.
And my reason for asking her that was because as things are shaping up here, I realized that, we can't avoid going up significant amount on the town side. But if the school side stayed flat, the overall swallow wouldn't be as bad. If the school goes up 7 or 10% and we're going up 5%, yikes, that's gonna have mutiny and everything will get voted down.
Yeah.
But that was good news, I guess.
Yes.
I just hope that she's true to her word. I mean, I don't mean to insinuate you wouldn't. I'm hoping it turns out that way.
2 quick comments about that, and it's really good. I looked at the tax rate forms for the state for this year. The town of Canaan's bacon was saved by the schools this year. Because we had proposed a year ago that the tax rate was going to go up 6 or 7%. And Dan Collins and I talked about it after one of the meetings recently. And so I don't know how, I said, I don't know how you're able to come in with a flat tax rate. And then I looked at the forms and I saw how, the reason you came in with a flat tax rate is because the school tax rate went down. Which offset. Kudos to the school, they ought to get recognition for trying to do the right thing and keeping the cost. So that's a really important thing. In terms of the overall increases. I plan before you do the final meeting, I want to bring in a list of where all the increases, I used to do it when I worked here. So I want to have the list and I want to see what the total is of significant increases, like over $50,000 or $100,000. And then really what we used to do was to do it amongst the department heads to go through and say, okay, where are the priorities? Because if you do them all, you got a $600,000 or $700,000 increase and they're going to notice. So I think it's important to at least look at them in context. Have a list, all the major increases. You may decide that you need all, in which case you got a hell of a sales job. You may decide that 6 out of 10 are what's needed, that's fine. But that ought to be ultimately the last piece in the budget process is to compare in context all the departments, all of the needs. Because, you know, we've been too tight probably for the last 12 years. And there are reasons why, you know, politics have changed and there's other reasons why. And you're absolutely correct, with not having a mechanic for 3 years. I was about kissing your feet when you took that job. It was critical. I mean, our equipment was going down the tubes.
It's been a challenge.
1 year without maintenance, takes 2 to 3 years life off.
Yeah, that's it.
I think didn't the school use some of their surplus?
Yeah, they did, but that wasn't the whole thing. They did a decent job in the
Yeah,
budget.
no, I didn't mean to insinuate they hadn't, but for years it wasn't them doing that. But I thought last year they plowed some of the
And I will
surplus.
say, ever since Amanda was selected as superintendent, she's done that every single year. Because even 3 years ago, she was doing that when she first took the job. So kudos to her.
We've commented about the idea of one warrant article for to lease 4 pieces of equipment or 4 articles. I'm not campaigning one way or the other, but I just want to mention an important consideration, I think, would be. Karen was right, 1 warrant article, lease 4, if it gets voted down, you're dead, you can't buy any of them. Yeah. So Karen suggested we should think about 4 separate warrant articles. Which, by the way, if we were gonna buy those pieces of equipment, each one, we would add a warrant article for a grader and a warrant article for a backhoe, you know, that kind of thing, right? So if we could go with 4 warrant articles, proposing 4 separate leases for those 4 pieces of equipment. However, now you put the voters, if the overall increases are so large that the voters are in a mood to rebel a little bit. You put them in the position of choosing which of those 4 pieces of equipment they might approve or which ones they might shoot down. You know, they might approve the, I don't know, the backhoe and not the grader. And if Bob had a choice, it might be the other way around. So I don't know how you manage that risk of voter rejection of the warrant articles. And I don't know if it's a bigger risk with 4 separate ones where the voters are picking and choosing.
So I think we have the ability to communicate that. I think we could break it out saying if you decide to keep the grader and not replace the grader, there's a potential for a $70,000 repair or whatever.
I do that for, I don't know with what forum you communicate those things, but those are things to think about.
Yeah, I agree. I think
I could see the advantages going either way, but there are risks going either way. Yeah.
Could there be alternate warrants? Meaning, I'm sorry, could there be alternate warrants, meaning one for a lease and then one for a purchase?
Bad.
Well, yeah, but you're, even at that, you might change something, 2%. In terms of the interest, let's pretend that the leasing company is not gonna compete with the municipal contract. You're not gonna, the interest rates have decreased dramatically, everybody knows that. Maybe we'll shave a couple of percent. Maybe you know, you can tweak the maintenance package a little bit. At the end of the day, you know, you still spend $700,000, $800,000, $900,000 for this equipment. And I think it's kind of important, you guys have to say, everything that you guys said from the various points from the board, from Mike's point of view, from the history of tight budget, and the other Mike over here, and from you on budget, you on CIP. Those are very informative messages that hopefully you can, that's the pitch, everybody needs to cooperate, you know, contribute to that discussion. And I think that's a great pitch, I mean, you all have understood how you got here, what you need to do, and the pain associated with it. And, you know, yeah, you're never gonna know it. We kind of went through this with the infield, with the public service, some public safety building, and the library, and the town hall came up at once. They went for all of it. Nobody did. The thing about separate warrant articles and a single warrant article is it's a batting order and a voter fatigue thing. People are gonna vote for a certain warrant article, and they're gonna reach a tolerance on dollars, say I voted for enough stuff. And the batting order might determine where they get that voter fatigue. Right?
You're gonna have one for the library, you got, whatever, you got a number of them.
So
Yeah.
I will also say, if you go back and look, if the select board votes for something and the budget committee votes for something, generally those items do get passed. Very, I mean, Mike, you can, maybe, you can, I mean, but I've gone back and looked at 99% of the time, because we're their elected officials, you guys, us. They put us in here to do all this hard work and figure out what the best decision was.
Yeah.
And yeah, three committees and, you know, a lot of brain power here putting it together. We're coming up with what the right thing we think is for the town. And if we vote that way, then the voters generally follow it, whether they like it or not. And you're not gonna get 100% voting positive for it anyways, so. I just,
Yeah, I think I think that Jack is right, that we should be planning some kind of deliberative session, at least development function. Where, you know, where he's addressing certain issues. Guys addressing certain issues, and whoever needs to address certain issues, the financing side, and whatever, we have a batting order of people who are gonna address and talk about why this is where we've come from. I think when you're thinking about, you know, how that runs, you should try to think of a presentation plan.
You have a special select board meeting with sole agenda to address this. Get all of you who have just spoken so eloquently about this. And do like a pre-meeting.
Yeah.
Maybe do a couple of them, give it as much.
It's all phone show, come on, we know how to do this.
Yeah. And then get some feedback, see how that feels.
I have a process question. If you have a warrant article. $165,000 or whatever, $165,000, I know this is not the number, but to lease, you know, 1 ton. And that fails. If you also had some money in the budget. You fail to agree to a lease, could you then use general fund money to purchase one?
well, we wouldn't use general fund money, we'd go to the CIP, so you'd have to vote from the CIP.
Whether you lease it, whether you purchase it, or whether it comes out of the CIP, it's still one line.
Okay,
And so.
But
but you couldn't put a lot, like you couldn't put 160,000 in the highway budget. Not earmarked, and then if the lease fails, you could just, the select board could be like, oh, we need this piece of equipment.
One piece, as opposed to.
Right, I'm just trying to think of,
Well, in the delivery session.
you can't,
RSA, no, and that's what Elliot was talking about.
Right.
The warrant
Right.
fails.
If the warrant fails, then the town says you're not spending the money on this.
what if you're focusing on lease, or it
Doesn't matter.
doesn't matter.
there is something you could do that we've done in the past. Every budget has got some amount of slush. Because you're anticipating needs, you may not get to the needs, you may not do it. There's always money available, and over the years, it's averaged somewhere between $100,000 and $300,000 in a $4 million budget. Okay, not a huge amount, but it's there. As long as you don't have a no vote on a grader. Okay. You can thread a needle and you'll all look like saints. Because if you take the money that's left in the unassigned fund balance before the close of the fiscal year and appropriate it to the account for equipment for a grader, it means that you could actually do the deal in the following year for a couple $100,000 less on the gross. Okay, which could cut your cost 20%. And you could go back, just think of what you would look like in terms of credibility. If you ask the voters to approve 160, and a year later you go back and report, yep, we did it all, we did it for 140. So that's the potential. So you can take and marry money out of the general fund into an equipment account. It works actually the other way around, but the long and short is you can spend money that's in the general fund and appropriate it in other areas for the same piece of equipment. We've done it for years and.
So strategically, could you do like 3 warrant articles and put some money in and not, you know, I don't know, I'm just thinking of different ways, you know.
I honestly don't know.
I don't know either.
Yeah.
I mean, I think transparency and being honest with everybody is the best way to go.
If you don't put a warrant article up, it doesn't fail, it doesn't pass, but if you put it in the budget, I don't know.
You really, somebody ought to call a lawyer.
The
Yeah.
strategy was the purchases we're looking at are so high, they're all 6 figures. Anything that we put in the operating budget inflates it a lot, where if we break it out as a warrant article, nobody wants the default budget, so we want our operating budget to pass. So we don't want to jack up the operating budget, so break the 6-figure expenditures out as warrant articles. And pass them that way and see what the interest is, because no matter what, nobody wants the default budget, that would be really bad.
That would be good.
It was done in 2009, individual warrant articles and everyone went down the tubes. And there were five major pieces.
So, I mean, you guys have a lot more history, obviously, with the town and what people think here, so, you know.
Well, the town's changed and expectations have changed, and that's to the good in terms of getting services. It'll always be offset though by what's the impact on the real person.
Sure.
And, you know, you got a $500,000 house, the impact is different than trailer, which I've said hundreds.
I get it.
One challenge all 3 boards face you, I think, is we talked about communication with the voters. Jack spoke to that very well a few minutes ago. My concern is this: I've gone to the deliberative session almost every year for the 8 years I've been here. Generally, 30 to 40 voters show up at the deliberative session, out of about 800 voters who will show up on voting day. So those 30 or 40 might hear our message. And by the way, those 30 or 40 include some of us. Thankfully. But only 30 or 40 might hear that message if we just aim it to the deliberative session. And 800 voters will go to the polls. And if the tax rate's going way up, if those 800 voters are angry and 30 of them heard our message, it's not gonna help. I'm struggling with, isn't there a better way to get the message out to the voters? A better forum, more communication. I don't know the right answer, but I just ask everybody to be cognizant of that. Think about how can we tell the voters, help them understand why we are where we are, what challenges we face, you know, those kind of things, the messages that we all heard tonight.
Yeah, and I think, you know, that message comes as a joint communicative from the CIP and the budget and the.
Well, everybody in this room tells 10 people, that's 170 people, so.
Say again?
If everybody in this room tells 10 people, we got 170
That's
people.
part of it, that's part of it, maybe.
Well, I think that's right. I mean, people who go to the deliberative session are usually interested.
So I don't say that to be negative, I say that to try to get us to all think about, how can we get this message out?
Yeah, no, that's a good point.
Have the flyers that you created on the meeting.
So.
Have the flyers that you created on the meeting.
They close to about everybody goes, let's be honest.
John, you've been very quiet last email. Well, there's more than enough stars. Yeah, but you have your finger on the pulse around this thing. What's going through your mind?
Well, I mean, we're here to do the budget.
Yeah.
And the budget's pretty straightforward. And we're all hung up on whether we're gonna lease or we're gonna buy. And there's too much money and how the hell are we gonna do it? But there's really nothing we can do but go do it.
Karen?
I was just saying that, in some way, I really would appreciate, we get our communication, our message articulated here with the budget committee maybe, or whatever, so that we all have that same message. Because then as Steve said, you go and talk to people, well, we've got, but I wanna say the right thing. So it should be. I'm just asking.
You've been to a lot of these, I mean, all these meetings, a lot of CIP. It is, Karen.
Well,
Cost of not doing some of this replacement.
right, no, I know, but I just think maybe it would be good if we all just. If we
Absolutely.
just spend a little time on, here are the points we wanna make. So that everybody hasn't got their own hand.
You think we could get you to draft those, as you see them tonight? Me? Well, yes, you. Okay, that would be helpful.
Well, I mean, it seems as though there ought to be separate individual letters of support that underscore from the various positions, budget, CIP, select board, maintenance, anybody else, former town administrator. Why the time has come to pay the piper, what that means, the extent of that everyone's worked so hard. And somehow you package that together, a written document, everybody signs off on a lot of, it's like a declaration or something. And then figure out how to get it out, whether it's the newsletter, whether it's part of the town report or something, newspaper ad, I don't know. But, I mean, just kind of attached to a lot of the issue of how are you gonna get to the voters? How do you get 6 million without spending $10,000 on postage? Hey,
I'm a content creator, that's why I'm showing it. I think that we have a lot of different people who get your emails. And they are on a computer and they obviously have some tech savvy if they're at that level. If you had some sort of message with a live person, not something that I would have to click and read and go through, but if you had a 3-minute pitch.
video?
It could be something that you could put a link to in your email and it could be tagged to your website. And people could just click on it and get the scope. It would need to be very clear,
Good job,
very direct.
Gary.
Here's why I'm here. But it needs to be forward and pointed around.
That's good.
Like, you're sending that out, if you're clicking on it to look, maybe they would take the time, and that would be a lot of your people interested in this topic, because as a community member, we may be a little frustrated that it's been pieced so long, why haven't things been taken care of before? And if you could explain that, I would listen to a 3-minute spiel.
I think we could do all that in a 3-minute spiel.
Yeah.
You got the.
Was my.
Mike?
Stephen's right about the board supporting it and budget committee supporting it. There's another piece to the puzzle. If you go back and look at 10 years of town reports, I think I probably stashed at least 10 pages in every report saying how low the tax rate was and how consistent we've been in holding down costs. So you need to have your messages, notwithstanding the 3-minute pitch. You need to have the messages succinct and to the point, and you got to figure out what those points are. So one of the points is going to be, you need stuff. So you need good roads, you need paving, you need equipment, you need all the other things that are in the budget. Maybe not so much as others, but the long and short of it is you need stuff. That's the pitch. The second pitch is you will do everything in your power to keep the cost down to try to get you the stuff. And that's really what the message was for the better part of 7 or 8 years. It's just to reach out. And I will tell you, over the years, some years we took unspent money to hold the tax rate down or to keep the rate flat. In other years, it was using money to take care of emergencies, so we didn't have to go up on the tax rate. So those are all strategies that the board can do. But the message has got to be fairly short and sweet. And there's a need, so you got to tell people what the need is, and there's a remedy, and these are the various remedies we've looked at, but we will do our level best to give you the most bang for the buck. Those ought to be the 2 messages. You get it, I don't know what will happen.
Well, we've talked a lot about this tonight, and I'm not sure we can keep talking about it tonight. But do we have any other business that anybody wants to bring forward? Cindy, so I see you're here.
I'm here,
We went a quick, through the trustee of the trust funds,
right,
and we just saw a small increase. For,
for the stipend.
yep,
The only other thing I'd like to have you put in would be maybe $100 in the event that the charitable trust office presents a seminar. We've got two fairly new trustees, and it would be very worthwhile to go there, you know, hear the message, and that would pay some money for them to do.
How much?
Is there $100?
$100.
Is there cost to the actual?
No.
No,
it's
so it's
put
free.
on- It's a free seminar, but they haven't done it for a few years. They haven't updated their.
Oh, okay, yeah, so they want, we want for that.
What's that?
$100.
Okay, thank you.
I have to just, very briefly.
Yes.
I'm about to speak on behalf of the Board of Directors of the Goose Pond Association. On page 9, there's a $2,000 budget item, a grant to the Goose Pond Lake Association from the town. We've had it for many years. My kids have been very supportive of we use that money to subsidize the Lake Coast program. That's the courtesy boat inspections that get done to prevent milfoil spread and whatever. You know, it's about a $10,000 or $14,000 expense to the Lake Association, so we make up the difference with dues and donations. But everyone knows there'll be no water in Goose Pond next year. There won't be any boats, there won't be any boat inspections, so we won't need that $2,000, so we'd like to return that, you know, not ask for it, I guess we should take it out of the budget.
Okay, so it's on page 9, under rec fund association.
Right. And then on page 10. You know, the movie Dave, remember the movie Dave? We reserve the right to ask for it again in the future.
Leave $1 in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, leave it down there, just in case.
That's all I have.
Thank you. Anything else? All right, well, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay.
All right,
When's the next meeting?
the next meeting.
The second Tuesday next week.
And we're back at the EOC on that day.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.